Welcome to Alpha Wolf Trading. Did you know that there's over 12,000 stocks or companies that trade on the OTC? Between the NASDAQ and the New York Stock Exchange, you have over 7,000 companies. But us as retail investors, we wouldn't know that unless we were researching. Because why? Wall Street focuses on the elite, the big companies. And where the retail investor has their advantage is in small and micro-cap stocks. Why? Because you have the opportunity to speak directly with leadership. That is what this is all about here at Alpha Wolf Trading. We're trying to find the hidden gems, and we interview the executive teams of companies that we think meet the parameters to be those hidden gems. I also want to make sure you understand that this is not a paid-for promotion. I collect no compensation for the interviews I do here. These companies that I interview have been identified as potential opportunities for me and the members of Alpha Wolf Trading to receive a higher than average return on our investment. These companies I have identified either because of a technical setup on a chart, a fundamental change within the organization, management team, new products, all kinds of different things that actually lead me here. But what do I think is the most important? Leadership. And that is why I do these interviews. I want to understand what drives the person that is leading the charge. I want to feel their passion. I want to understand their vision and the strategy that they're going to use to achieve success. That is what these interviews are for. I want to understand the share structure and the cap table, the size of the TAM, the total addressable market. This is the opportunity to learn all of those things. So sit back and enjoy. And if you learn anything from today's interview, do us a favor. Subscribe to the Alpha Wolf Trading YouTube channel.
Good.
Hey everybody, Tim from Alpha Wolf Trading coming at you with a favorite of mine, one that I think is doing good for the world, doing good for the industry, and has not had a whole lot of love from Wall Street, or he's had a lot of love from his patients, a lot of love from his patients, not a lot of love from Wall Street. And it's frustrating because I've seen what this gentleman has done. I know the challenges that he's overcome to get this far, and he has not been rewarded, not even by the slightest token, with Wall Street. So it's frustrating, but Khiron Life Sciences CEO Alvaro Torres, and Alvaro, I want to thank you for coming in, man. I mean, how long have we been doing this? We've been doing this a little bit, huh?
Yes. Hi, team. Thank you so much for inviting me. I think first time we met, it was in November, no? In Las Vegas, almost a year ago. We had probably spoken 6 months before. Yeah. It looks like, it sounds like 10 years, right? Every day is like a month now, but yeah.
So listen, the reason I wanted to have this is because you had some news in Colombia, which I sure as shit didn't think, as I looked at your organization, the one thing I thought is, man, they got coverage of insurance. This is the last, I don't need to worry about Colombia. I need to worry about these other places that you were trying to, go into and expand. And then you had the news that came out that change of government, and all of a sudden now we're not sure if cannabis is going to be covered by insurance, right?
Yes.
And that's currently where we're at. However, you and I talked on the phone, and while it's definitely unsettling, I'm sure for you, you do feel as though there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes, very much.
And a very positive light, or?
Yeah, it's very positive. I mean, we've been we've been working nonstop for the last 5 months to get this topic in the eyes of the new government, which is very pro-cannabis. Sometimes it's just a lot of education that it takes to show them that they need to step up, and before we start solving the rest of the world's problems, we got to solve this one. And so, yeah, but we're very positive the fact that the government published last week the new list of medications that are going to be covered starting January 1st of 2023. We are in the process of technical tables with the ministry, which is part of the process for the last 50 years. It has to be signed by the end of the year by law. We'll start on January 1st, and that gives us a lot of optimism about how can we resume and then continue to expand on a topic that today is more relevant than ever. Because maybe before it was only Chiron talking about it, but this is a topic that every patient knows because of the awareness that it has created in the last 5 months. I would say, well, first time we were talking to him, I always said to you, insurance coverage is extremely important for Colombians. We live in a country that 95% of the people are covered by insurance schemes, and so all the medications are free. So one of the biggest challenges we had when we began this unique idea, I guess, it's that a patient doesn't want to take methadone, which is a powerful opioid, but it's free, right? And so when you're talking with somebody that makes $1,000, $500 a month, at best, $300 a month minimum wage, and you'd ask them to buy a cannabis product for $40, $50, or go to the system and get it for free, that was the initial challenge that we had when we started. And I guess, we look at the first half of the year, we were doing fantastic numbers in terms of patient acquisition, patient conversion, patient retention, because we had this insurance coverage and it starts to pop up. And I think I told you before, we did almost 10,000 units a month in May at $60 each with 90% gross margins. And so I guess sometimes when you think about building something so unique and you're talking about the market share that you have in a country where most people just focus on the B2B, and you are probably the only guys who set up the infrastructure to have pharmacy, drugstore, distribution, doctors, clinics, because that's the only way I saw that we could actually build the demand. You start, also tickling some special interests. And I think this situation, what happened out of the blue was, and it happened for a reason during that week of transition between the previous government and the new government. And that caught us off guard, caught everybody off guard, particularly because the details of what happened was mostly a private communication between the functionaries of the ministry and some special interests, which I cannot name, regarding whether this should be covered or not. And the answer was basically, let the new government decide. So when that happens, all of a sudden you see all these, hey, we don't know, the government is not saying anything, let's wait and see what the new government says. Now, this new government, of which we are very knowledgeable of, and they are very knowledgeable of us, you have all these new people coming in, new ministers, new vice ministers, new directors, new coordinators, and you have to tell them, this is what happened. You need to fix this. This is the way to fix it, because the patients matter. So we started doing campaigns with patients. I find it still incredible and amazing that maybe if this had happened 2 years ago, team, I would be done, well cooked. But it happened in a period where we have 10 to 15,000 patients. So you started to get a lot of support from these patients going on radio, TV, and bring the awareness to the government. Hey, this is a topic, but they didn't know they had to solve this. That was not part of the plan. Their plan was, we're going to get adult use legalized, right? Because medical is already all good. So you have to educate every new person that comes into the government. You have to take care of all the special interests in terms of blocking and tackling. You have to, keep bringing patients, which we have every day. And that allows us also to be closer to what the government is thinking, which I guess would be a silver lining in all of this. So that today I feel that now that we got the government to reaffirm this starting January 1st, that we're going to be in a much stronger position. I think the other thing that it helped for us is that before this happened, we were maybe quite alone in the industry in Colombia. Not to say maybe completely alone in what mattered to us. And I think trying to align the entire industry so that they realize, you all want to export elsewhere. There's really no markets elsewhere. Right? So why are we just trying to make sure that this market, which is 50 million people, 6 million paying patients, we can share it all? Because there's a lot of potential. So that's been the last 5 months, Tim. It's been, on one hand, you have to be very, very, very careful with your communications. Because remember that the government, the old one or the new one, never made an announcement on this. They never changed the law. They never changed the resolution. This was an interpretation in a private conversation. So we were always thinking about the day when that happened is, okay, we don't know when it's going to get solved, but also what matters most? What is the number one priority that we have to ensure with our communication strategy? And for me, and I don't think I'm wrong in that, but is the sustainability of the business plan. If we have to do everything aligned so that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, right? Because the immediate reaction is, we got to tell everybody this is happening. But wait, you have all these new entities, new people who are new to this story. They don't know what's going on. They don't know it's their fault. They don't know they have to fix it. And you have to be very careful about not pushing too many buttons and be able to have the conversations with everybody in a way that is not creating more pressure. Because, in Colombia, United States, Canada, or Europe, any public official rather say no than yes. It's much easier, right? So you got to get them to say yes. And how do you do that? And we thought about the pressure from the patients who came, the pressure from the courts, from patients who needed the medication. And it's tough that you are dealing with this, and you really cannot go out there and tell everybody, because what's at risk of all of doing that may be that, there's no light. And so I think from a strategy and communication perspective, I understand some of the frustration regarding why wasn't this communicated better. But the fact is that my objective was to make sure that whatever conclusion, it has the best chances to happen so that we can restart. And that's been, the last 5 months, 6 months of making sure that all these things happen. As you said before, the love, not that we're looking for more love than outside our family, but I think, whatever ends up in my future, the fact that we have patients, crying and talking about it and being pleading and begging and pressuring the government to get their medication back on track, I think that's a power that, the power of the action to create something good. So those are the things that we think about every day when you're dealing with all the situations, all the stress and all the problems that everybody rightfully has. But we are not just selling product, we're actually changing lives. And it sounds very subjective, but I can show you the 1,000 emails, the 1,000 radio shows where patients are begging for the government to make a decision, and they did. And it took them 4 months, but these guys are changing everything, right? There's a big plan. So to put on top of this, hey, you gotta solve medical cannabis. It's not a minor thing.
Right. So, just to reflect back, and when this initiative started with it was your company, it was that kind of made that whole thing happen, the insurance coverage, and it's from all the data that you collected on opioid use and deaths and addiction and the actual, whether it's placebo or whether it's medically confirmed there is a benefit to people that have PTSD and depression and chronic back pain, and I can go on, and fibromyalgia, right? I mean,
Myalgia, yes.
yeah, I mean, all of these different things, whether that people are who are suffering and in pain that don't want to take hard opioids, you know, and cannabis works for them. This is a real deal. This is a quality of life issue, right?
Yes, and you know, sometimes bad things happen and you are prepared for them. So one of the big issues in the last 4 months is when you're trying to educate everybody new on why this matters is, you know, what's the evidence, right? Because we have to make a decision, we have to reaffirm it. And I don't know how to call it, but the fact that, you know, we published in June this 2,400 patient study in Frontiers magazine, that we have 4 publications that nobody else has ever done, to be able to show this information on a peer review publication, and that just gains you more followers. Okay, this is not just, you know, it's not just people trying to get high. That's why I said that if it had happened a year ago, no, 2 years ago, I would be done.
Right.
I'm not trying to find silver linings. I'm just saying that it was really bad that it happened, but we had the tools to make sure that we can get it back on track.
So, I mean, yeah, sometimes, you know, good things come from bad things, right? I mean, and the fact that you did have all that data to say, look, here's the statistical evidence that, you know, this is changing people's lives, right? And this has helped these people. And everybody knows, I mean, you'd have to be under a rock not to know that opioids are a big addiction problem and a big cause of death problem, right? I mean, you'd have to be a moron not to know that. So if you have a solution to, or an alternative to, a highly addictive and, you know, devastating drug, then I think that, and you can prove that people are happy with the alternative. You know, the only people I could see having a problem with that is the drug manufacturers.
Oh, they have a big problem with that.
And that's who I could see benefiting, you know, from the demise of somebody like KHRNF, right? Because here's the deal. If this fight ends for you guys, then they won. They won in a big way. And I'm not just, they won against the entire industry, because it's going to set a whole bunch of people back, because this sets precedents, right?
Yes.
And you've been through enough battles now. I mean, and I know the beginnings. I remember your stories because they're hard to forget, and you're a fighter. And that's why you're here today. You're here today because you're a fighter. You know, you're not hiding down in a bunker somewhere. You're, you know, trying to keep this thing afloat and keep this thing running, right? You're not giving up. I can tell you that, right?
No.
Far from that. But this was a serious blow to the gut. I mean, it was and people have to expect or respect the fact that you are still standing. Yeah, it was a good blow, but you're still standing. And it sounds like this actually could wind up being better, because maybe they make it more permanent, right?
Yes, you remember that scene with Rocky IV with the Draco punches Rocky like that? That's how I feel the last. But yeah, you have to get up. You know, all these things also show you the resilience of the team that you have. In my case, that I'm blessed to have. I don't think, as I say to my team, people try to underestimate the power of the resilience that we have. And maybe that's because what we do matters. No, if maybe we're just selling cannabis for export, then you just say, well, there's plenty of those. So I'm not needed, but you're right. In this case, we build a regulation. We were the first company to get licensed. We were the first company to start doing selling medical cannabis. Remember that happened the day the country closed down for the pandemic, the same day that we got the permit. So all these things, drives it further. And I think in the end, it's because it matters. And but yeah, you have to stand up. I don't know. Like certainly, if we gave up, it would be done, right? If we gave up today, that's it. And that's the surefire way to just make sure that's the end of everything. But I don't know. I think we have to continue fighting the fights and every day, and just try to get done and wait for a couple of more days to get some good news, and that motivates everybody. Okay, so then we got the challenges. We have a lot of things stacked against us, but I mean, you nailed it. I mean, in the end, who's gonna win this? The same guys who been poisoning in the United States are gonna just keep doing this, and it's gonna happen with psychedelics. It's gonna happen with anything else that's new. I'm not trying to be a advocate for everything, but just saying that it makes no sense that we should give up or something like that.
So, I guess I would say with an impassioned plea to anybody that's out there that knows somebody that's struggling or has struggled with opioid addiction and or maybe lost their lives to opioid. If you've been impacted by that, here's the thing, and you're a believer in cannabis, and you're a believer that there are medicinal qualities within that plant. This is a company that has done things that nobody else has done that I know of, that, I mean, really has tried to change an industry, and was successful at it. And, there's some powerful forces that would love to see him not be successful. And if there's somebody out there that can help, because, reality is this: the consumer and the retail investor have a lot more power than you think you do, especially when it's in numbers. When people come together in numbers, there is great strength in that. And that is what Chiron needs. That is what Alvaro needs. Is he needs strength in numbers to people to step up to the plate. And he's not going to get any support from Wall Street, because that's a whole nother story, because that's all about finance, and he's not getting it there. He doesn't get any coverage. So, he's kind of been in this battle all by himself, him and his team. And if I thought he was on the wrong side of the fight, I wouldn't be talking about this right now, but I don't think he is on the wrong side of the fight. I think he's on the right side, and he needs help. So, and help can be just simple support as a shareholder, as a cannabis user, right? I don't care where you are. I mean, I'm talking to everybody all over the world as far as I'm concerned, that may not speak your language, but hopefully you can.
We'll translate it. We'll translate to Portuguese and German and Spanish.
But I mean, this is a big thing, I think, for the entire industry. I really, really do believe that. And it would be sad to see a company that has made as many strides as this company has made, and really changed things, man, and to wind up losing to the same old guys. That would suck. So I don't know how else to say that, but I and I'm not saying this out of desperation. I want to make sure everybody's clear on that. I just see what Alvaro has done. I see what his team has done. I know what he's been through, and I happen to believe that there are medicinal benefits to, because you just see the patients. And like Alvaro said, when he's got people crying saying, "I don't want to go back to methadone," that to me is powerful. That gives me kind of goosebumps, right? I mean, it really does, because that's an impassioned plea. Please don't let me have to do this, right? I mean, I don't know what else to say on that. But before we hopped on, Alvaro, it's funny. You had said something to me that one of your board members said to you, and I want to kind of highlight on it for a minute, because one of my favorite plays is when you have a company that's got a good product or good service, and sometimes you need a new management team to come in and turn things around and put them on track. And that's because you have a whole new set of eyeballs that are looking at the issues. What's important, what's not.
Yes.
And then one of your board members asks you what?
Well, again, the last couple of months, and you're running all the should ups, could ups, would ups, right? Which is what a CEO also has to deal with. And I guess there's two questions there. First question he asked me is, if you were, would you take this job today? Would you leave what you have and join this company as CEO, Chiron, today? And that's a very good question, because you're thinking about all the, you have to get away from all the problems that you probably have caused, because of course it all lands on me and the team, but and look at what makes the business or what's going to make it successful with all the challenges. And you're taking a lot of thought to say, of course I would. Of course I would. I would take it today. If somebody offered me the job today, I would take it with the pay cut and all of that. Why? Because not the knowledge that matters, is I know it's going to be successful, because I wouldn't talk to everybody in the team, in Europe, in Colombia, in Latam, and realize that with all the challenges, there's a belief and there's a business model that showed that it could grow. With the European model for us is going to be tremendously successful. And we've done it with very little hands. So first question is yes. And the second is, well, then that's the case. You have to come in every Monday as if you were a new CEO. You have to forget about the could-ups, would-ups, should-ups, and be very mindfully clear about you're joining this new job. You're Alvaro Torres, and you are Francisca Carabag, or you are Juan Diego Alvarez, all these executives. This is your first day. What would you do today if you can forget about the rest of all these things that you have, the decisions that you have made? And that was tremendously positive advice, Tim, because you sort of get out of this spiral of self-doubt, and you have to think about, if I were new today, like this Monday, what would you do different? Where is the strength of the company? What do we want to care? What do we want to keep? Who do we want to keep? What matters and what doesn't? And I tell you that advice, and those two questions, have helped me and the team to, the executive of the company, to sort of, yes, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of problems, there's a lot of things we need to solve, but if we're here today, how do we refocus? How do we focus about our cash? How do we streamline the company? What matters? What doesn't matter? Is cultivation important? If not, what do we do with it? What decisions would you make today? Everybody says, oh, I'm going to forgive him because he's new. And forget a little bit about all the could-ups, would-ups, should-ups. Why did I do this? Why? Because in the end, you never did any of these decisions to create problems. You did it because that was the information you had at hand. And we live in an industry that's very regulated. But if you get rid of that noise, or at least spend the Sunday dwelling on that and then come back on Monday, I think that's, that also shows that our board is extremely committed to what we're doing, but also allowing us to focus, make decisions, and God knows what more things will happen, but I found it to be extremely mentally good for me and for the rest of the team, so that we can make decisions easier and move faster on those decisions.
Yeah, so I think it's one of the most powerful things I've actually heard, and quite I can't even. I think that's a fantastic way of viewing it, right? Because a lot of times what happens is you get caught in the rut of, you've got your vision, but maybe your vision isn't exactly the right vision. I mean, sometimes you have to step back and reevaluate and look at everything and say, okay, if I was coming in as the new CEO, what would I change from what's happening today, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes those are going to be tough answers to those questions, right? I mean, they're going to be some tough decisions, but those are decisions that have to be made. And that's the difference between a strong leader and one that isn't so strong, right? I mean, it's good to have focus. It's different to be micro focused. I mean, sometimes you've got to just take a look from 30,000 feet and say, where are we screwed up, man? And maybe it's me that screwed it up. You know what? Here's the deal. As far as I know, nobody's perfect.
No.
I don't know anybody that's perfect. And I can tell you the best lessons in life that I've learned are the ones where I really screwed up, right? I mean, those, as long as I learned from them and didn't do it again, then those are pretty powerful lessons and they make you stronger, smarter, better, in my mind, right?
Yes.
So no one can fault anybody for making a mistake. It's what do you do after that? It's how do you forget about the fact that yes, it was a mistake and I wish I would have done this, but you didn't. And there's no way you can go back in time and fix that. So why waste time there? It
Yes,
doesn't
and
make any sense.
also focus on I mean, when you're in these situations, like everything you've done is a mistake, right? You can take that look as well. Or you can also realize that there's been mistakes and there's been errors, but why would I join the company again? It's because maybe 5 good decisions that impact where the company is going. I don't doubt for a second that our go-to-market strategy has been wrong at all, even with all this, at all, even with the Colombian government, at all. And I think outside of this, without no shareholder, but the industry also knows it. If these guys have the right model, it's just that it's very difficult. I don't doubt for a second that we got into Europe. I think 2 years ago when we made that decision and all the acquisition of Pharma drug, the clinic, yes, those things take time to build, but we grew from $1 million to almost 5 this year. And thank God we made those decisions, and thank God people like Francie joined our company and the team, because at least today when we'll try to diversify the company. Well, we just had a very big drop in the last 5 months, and then all of a sudden you see UK and then Germany pop up. And yes, Germany I think is going to be for us very important market next year with the Pharma drug acquisition ramping up, because these things are not easy. So maybe you don't have a list of 10 things that you've done right, but the 5 things you've done right have a tremendous impact on why would anybody say, yes, I want to join. Because, I'm being very retrospective. We've been doing a lot of that soul searching. So that's important to be able to focus and say, what matters? Cultivation, maybe not. Mexico, who cares? Let's make our business work with what we have built. And I think one of this retrospect that I've been talking with the team as well, it's about, companies like in the cannabis industry, there's a lot of hope. Your strategies are very also built on your best information available on hope. Does the SAFE Act happen? Oh, if it happens, right? Does Mexico allow us to finally get the product out of the warehouse? Oh, if it happens. And I think when you look at those decisions and what you would do today, you have to say, well, very luckily, what we have today is a platform that works. And now that for the last 5 months, we've been working on these things, then we have the chance to grow, but we don't need to grow. This company team doesn't need to grow to 40 million. We need to streamline and we need to make this profitable within the means that we have. And that idea, not that it's new, is that when you start thinking about those decisions, you're thinking on that plane, how do we save? What do we save? What matters? What doesn't matter? Does it matter when we sell 25 or 30? No, it won't matter. What matters is, can we reduce our cost by how many millions? And how fast can we do it? And can we sell more with what we have and less? And I think the last 3 months have been about that, the planning on how do we continue our business without piling ourselves with more SG&A and more cost. And sometimes when you have that philosophy, which is the philosophy that we're having, is there's a lot of problems. Nobody's going to give us credit for selling 28 or 25. But if I sell 25 or 22 with an SG&A of 10, 9 instead of 15, that's all we need. And then we'll have another 5 later. Where's the growth? All of these things. But sometimes we get coupled in this triangle of growth and profitability. But growth costs money, and it eventually you don't necessarily get the reward for it. So hugely accelerated growth is not what the company's after right now. And I think we built the right infrastructure in Germany, UK, and Colombia, and now Brazil, that we need to just focus on that. And I think but that all comes from this board conversation of what would you do if you were new. I think it's about making sure that we have a business plan. It's about the quote unquote survival of the fittest, which it is. And know that if you really believe that cannabis is here to stay, which I believe it, it's also probably going to stay only if we are in it. And that sounds very messiah. I'm not trying to say that. I'm just trying to point out that we built this. Nobody else did. So the next 2 years, it requires us to be there so that it actually gets built better. There's a bigger market, there's more people joining. And these are the challenges that you have to take to be able to reach those goals. But you have to be more streamlined. We have to be less romantic about what's going to happen in the rest of the world, right? If Costa Rica approves cannabis tomorrow, who cares? Like, if we have built a successful business and
those opportunities, let's put it this way. If you can show that this is a viable money-making entity that can be extremely profitable with what you've built so far, those opportunities are going to come to you anyway. Why?
Yeah.
Because people want success. They want to do business with successful companies. They don't want to do business with companies that are a higher risk, right? So if you've proven that you can make it a profitable business and an extremely profitable business, those opportunities are going to be offered to you anyway, right? You could be the trailblazer, I suppose, but let somebody else what we know, I think, in the industry is that I can't think of anybody that's really super profitable. No, right? In the entire industry. So, let somebody else go blaze that trail. It doesn't mean that they're going to come out on top, right? It just means that they're there. But, you, I think, do have the business model. You do have the plan. You've used that to get to where you are. Do you need to get bigger to be a profitable company and keep everybody employed? No, you don't. I mean, you just need to be right. So I think that's it.
And the right sizing of the company and knowing who you're dealing with, and be also a lot more focused with your team, because none of the strength that we talk about comes also from a continuous motivation between the people who are going through this, right? Because team, like, we are all shareholders. I bought stock at every single level, all the time, right? We are not rich people. So for all of us, it's also our investment, our equity. We all want to see it through because we all have time. We're not isolated from the troubles of shareholders, particularly in this company. And you don't get rewarded for that. Of course, I'm not asking for that, but certainly I should have sold stock at $4. We didn't. But I think it's all more about getting all these decisions right, getting the right team, the right motivation, and really believing in the model that we have. But it's also a matter of understanding what works and what doesn't, and when do you make those calls. Like, we acquire Pharma drug in August, right? It takes months, and you're dealing with a very regulated entity, be able to register your new strains. And so from the outside, you're saying, well, the Pharma drug doesn't work. But sometimes may I remind you guys, everybody in the company, that the first month of sales in Colombia, the day that we opened the clinic and the country closed, that month we sold 8 units. And that was 8 more units than anybody else in the company. We were patient. We got to almost more than 10,000 a month. Okay, now we have to restart soon, but we have the patience there. The same thing happens with this type of acquisition like Pharma. If we didn't have it, I think probably Europe would be, a blip in the dot for a dot in the chart for us, because it's hard to manage an asset-like company without any licenses. But when you look at what data, how do you sell more products, what the growth that we've had in the UK that most people would dream of. So you have to be able to balance the dream and the hopes with something that this is the reason why we are going to be growing this region. And all the synergies that we built the last 3 years are starting to play. The fact that we have, education, we invested in all these trials from Spain, from Germany to the UK to Colombia, makes this a very powerful brand in the patients. And those things you want to care and you want to keep. Other things like, do we need to grow 4 tons of cannabis a year? No, no. And those are very tough decisions that are in the process. But also you realize that with our business model, anybody in Colombia would die to get our contract.
Right.
So those are what the balance. Like there's some dreams, yes, but they have to be rationalized. There's decisions that we've made on like Pharma drug. I think is going to be key for us, and the value of it is way more than the company. And there's other things that we are in the right mindset. We have to make the strong decisions, and that's not going to solve every problem today. But I do tell you one thing: like fighting with this decree sign in Colombia is very different than fighting without it. And if we have been fighting without it, you can imagine how much we'll fight after we get it. Also,
listen, I mean, I like I said, I think in a couple of, you're talking a matter of days that this has to be signed, right? By a matter of days. And then I think that gives that pumps some more motivation back into, because morale's got to be down, right? It's got to be down.
Oh, yes, of course.
So you get that handled, and that brings back, that's something to celebrate. That's something to keep moving towards, right? And then you see the patients coming back and their lives have improved, right? And like I said at the beginning of this thing, I feel as though you're on the right side of the fight on this. And at some point, hopefully you get some recognition for this, man. And I'm not just talking about you specifically. I'm talking about your entire team, right? Hopefully they get recognized for the contribution that they're making to the entire industry. And the data that you continue to collect that will continue to build those statistics that will show people, and hopefully bring the death rate down that's occurring in opioid use, right? See an actual impact there. I mean, there's a lot at stake here in my mind. So, if there's someone out there that happens to come across this and happens to have the same feeling or agree, and you think you can help fight the fight, you should reach out to Alvaro and have a really good long conversation, because I think you're going to be extremely impressed with what you find in this man. So,
well, I do tell your team that absolutely. I have been able to. We have strong shareholders that have been very supportive, even with all these things. You yourself are one, so that's all something that we all have to be also. I'm very grateful for, and I think this team, when they eventually will be recognized. I think they are recognized right now by the industry, absolutely. In Germany, in the UK, in Colombia, I think the team that Chiron has built is probably one of the most recognized in terms of the know-how that they have. But we gotta help ourselves, right? I was telling you before, the best way to help ourselves is to be focused. Investors and shareholders have all the right in everybody's capital, myself included. I have had a lot of support from particular shareholders, which it matters a lot. Those things matter a lot, because these books that you read on management, when you go to Barnes & Noble, they're written 10 years after the problems were done, right? So you just have to be able to write them. And we're going to fight until we continue to be able to win that. I know that we're doing the right things. We know we can make better strategic decisions on the structure of the company, cash burn, expenses, and that's being the focus right now as well. You have to kick the balls and tackle and block. But we've met quite a few times, but we are very resilient. I think it's never good to underestimate the power of these companies' resilience. And of course, we will figure out how to get more help, and there's all the things that we need to sort out. But maybe we just get this couple of good news, and we still have to fight for it, right? Because you never know. You're talking about very powerful special groups. You have 10, 15 days of meetings and make sure that, okay, this is protected. And then once it happens, you got to go back to the insurance companies, you got to go back to the patients and make sure that you have a proper communication so that nobody's freaking out the next day. But we'll get to that fight in January 1st, right? There's still a couple more rounds to go in the next 10 days.
Listen, Alvaro, let's look, I love the fact that you're not just hiding out and saying, hey, I'm just going to deal with this stuff and lay low. I mean, you're out there fighting, and that is, I think, the most important thing that everybody needs to know that's either a shareholder or considering being a shareholder. Alvaro is a very transparent, straight shooter, man. And I think, like I said, this is a quality of life issue. This is a people that are suffering issue, and if you just break it down to that, I was telling Alvaro at the beginning of this that I have tried to, as I prepare for the new year, and this hasn't been a great year as an investor, but as I try to prepare for the year that comes ahead, and I think to myself, there are things that you support that are, when you're poor, you have wants and you have needs, right? and you may need a car. It doesn't mean that you have to go out and buy a Lambo, right? I would love a Lambo, but I don't really need it. I can get a little VW Bug or a Chevy Cavalier.
Chevrolet Cabriolet 1992 with no reverse and no muffler.
Or I could get that, and that'll do, because it'll get me from point A to point B, right? And then I think about, if we all just kind of looked at the things that we are dealing with in life, and if we addressed the issues that we really need, and maybe put aside the things that we want, like the metaverse, an escape from reality, an alternate world where we can escape from reality of our real world, and we're spending billions of dollars there. And is that something that we actually really need, or is that something that we want, right?
Yeah.
And this follows this particular industry, this particular fight. I feel this one is a need, not a want, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So,
for sure.
If you look at it from that window, maybe that inspires somebody. I don't know. It's going to inspire me. I can tell you that. As an investor, I have to look at companies and say, well, is this a want or is this a need? This is something that is going to make society better. Is it going to help, people that are suffering? Is it going to, make us more efficient? I mean, there's all kinds of questions you can ask yourself, and then say, well, geez, is this something I want to get behind? Right. So it's more than how much money can I make? It's like, is this something I can really get behind? So that's the message that I would send to everybody. I am a believer in this, man. I'm going to fight with them till the end, and hopefully you come out on top, right? At some point that you hope that turn happens and you come out on top. I believe good things happen to good people. Yeah, and you've been doing this a long time. You've been fighting the fight. I think you're going to win, man. I do. I have faith in you. So I have faith in you, and you're going to do it. You're going to do it. I mean, I'm not even going to question this. So when you have something, maybe after the first of the year, and you get more clarity on what's happening,
yes, absolutely.
We'll revisit this, huh?
Great, team. Thank you so much. And as I said, it's not just a matter of belief, but a CEO and team were making all the difficult choices from a state of mind of what would we do and how do we do it. And how do we gain back the credibility of the shareholders in terms of there's a plan and it's got to be streamlined and it can be streamlined. And there's going to be very difficult choices. But maybe that also allows us to say, this is not just sinking money on an empty, right, well. It's really about these guys have the clarity, they're fighting the battles, they're winning those battles, and they're going to come out of this much leaner, much more focused. We don't need to ask them again what's going to happen in Argentina because they don't care. Right now, they're focused on these markets that they have. And maybe that message is important because it's not, we have to be able to, we have a very good business model that can be successful, much leaner, without really focusing so much on this hyper growth that we all got caught up in this industry. That's not valued at all anyways. I don't see the value by anybody, but that would be just my last message, Tim, and thank you so much for the time today.
Yeah, you bet. Listen, if anybody's, intrigued by the story, listen, go to Chiron's website and sign up for their investor alerts. That way, every time they get a press release, it'll get sent directly to your email. If you don't want to jump in the stock today, that's fine. You don't have to jump in the stock, but pay attention to what's going on with the company. Follow the story. And maybe at some point after you get comfortable, as I am, maybe then you decide to pull the trigger. But I do think this is one that is worthy of following. So
thank you
so
much, Steve.
All right. Hold on one second there, Alvaro. I'm going to shut this off. Thanks for tuning in to watch this interview with Khiron Life Sciences Corporation with Alvaro Torres, CEO, ticker symbol KHRNF. I hope you enjoyed today's interview, and if you did, please do us a favor, give us a like. How about giving us a share? While you're at it, why not give us a follow? Until next time, stay safe. Alpha Wolf Trading wishes you the very best of success.